Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. My guest this evening, and I was, it was unusual to say evening. I'm used to morning, but it's morning for my guest here, Naomi Galliano. Now I'm really messing up. Galliano is here with us from down under, and she was involved or close to where the cyclone came through and was out of power for 4 days. And Naomi, can you give us an update on your weather down there and the return to normal?
Yeah, the weather has been not too bad for the last 2 days. We've had a bit of sunshine. It's getting warm again. We got power back yesterday, which is really great, and a lot of other areas have power back. There are still some areas without power. There has been some local flooding, but water levels seem to be falling, and it's not so bad as previous disasters on the flooding front. And the kids are back to school today, and it seems as though life is returning to normal. So I'm very, very grateful for that.
Oh, for sure. All right. Glad that you made it through just fine
Thank you.
without any problems. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Very good. So, Naomi's here tonight to talk about emotional regulation and her work with mothers um, to help us live better lives. And so, Naomi, can you tell us how you, like part of your story, how did you come to do the work you're doing? And um,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I'd love to. And firstly, Carla, I'd love to thank you for this opportunity and for you inviting me to be here with you on your podcast. I really appreciate you connecting with me and inviting me on. So thank you so much. It's a real privilege.
oh,
And yeah, so a little bit about me and how I got into this work. Well, about 7, 8 years ago. And actually, just a little intro. I'm from the Gold Coast, Australia. I have 3 children, a 21-year-old daughter and 2 boys that are 13 and 14. And I've been married for 18 years. And yeah, we have a really blessed life here on the Gold Coast. And, 7, 8 years ago, it looked like we had the perfect life, and it looked like I had everything completely together. And, we had a successful business, the nice house, the cars, everything I'd always dreamed of, especially coming from, a very poor family, a very strict religious upbringing, and being one of 7 kids. There had been a fair bit of trauma in my history. So I felt quite proud that I'd been able to step out and create a nice life for myself. However, it was more just on the surface, because behind closed doors, I was really struggling. At this stage, at this particular point in time, about 7 years ago, my daughter was in boarding school because I couldn't cope with how much she had
mm,
triggered me over the years. All the kids, not her at that stage, but my boys had a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorders when they were 2. So life was really full on, managing therapy appointments and doing all the things that I could do to help them to turn into successful human beings and independent, well functioning humans. And, I received a lot of praise for how well I was doing and how I seemed to have it all together. But that was more just what I presented to the world, because behind closed doors, I wasn't coping. Like I said, I did have to send my daughter to boarding school. I was constantly consumed with overwhelm, anxiety, and guilt. Before my daughter had left for boarding school, I was actually a really angry mum. And usually by about 9 a.m., most days, I would have lost it at her for something really small, and she was always triggering me. And at the time, I felt as though, it was her more than me, and the smallest things would trigger me into everything. So whilst life looked nice on the outside, on the inside I was fighting a really big internal battle, a lot of struggle around my self-worth. I felt like a failure as a mum, a human, and a wife, even though it looked like I was doing a good job. And I think this all came to a head where one afternoon I lost it with my son. I was just 5 or 6 years old at the time, and it was after a really hard day, a lot of pressure, everything everything that could go wrong had gone wrong, and I lost it. And then I broke down in tears. And in that moment, he came up to comfort me. And that's when I realized something had to change, that it wasn't just my daughter that was triggering me, but due to some other stresses that we were under at the time, financial stress that had hit our business, this brought everything up and out again. And so I realized I needed to break the patterns that were still playing out, the same patterns that I swore that I would break for my kids. And so at that point, I started looking for something that could help me. And what I noticed when I was looking, for courses out there to do, like I'd always wanted to help people. So I was looking at coaching courses, psychology, counseling, all the things. And what I noticed was that the industry and the personal development and mental health space, it's all very male dominated. And it's all kind of set up for men by men. It doesn't take into consideration the busy, unpredictable life of a mother. We don't have hours a day to spend on ourselves, to spend on gratitude practices and journaling and breath work and meditation. Although I was trying to do all those things and still feeling the way that I was, it's really difficult to create lasting change to how you feel as a woman and as a mum. And so what I discovered was that, what I started to look for was female specific approaches to healing. And what I discovered was a female specific approach to healing, something that helped to heal ancestral trauma, because I knew that I had inherited a lot through my bloodline, through my mother. She went through a lot of trauma herself. And I found a female specific approach that helps to not just shift our past emotions, but also to change the way that we think. So, as you may know, like our thoughts are on repeat. 95% of our thoughts are on repeat every day, and so we're thinking the same thoughts constantly. And my programming, if you want to call it that, was not very healthy. My self-talk and the way that the things that were going through my head were not positive, and so I wanted something that was going to shift that as well for me. And so I found a female specific approach that does just that. And that was great. So my anger was gone. I resolved years of shame and guilt and anxiety and overwhelm and all the things. And then I started my business. And then a few years later, I burnt it out. And so then this led me into my journey of nervous system work, which is where we really understand the nervous system's role in emotional dysregulation, but also in our life and in the habits that continue to play out. And the thing that was surprising for me about my burnout was I had all the self-care practices in place. I was doing all the right things, and I didn't actually feel stressed. And so the nervous system work really helped me to get into my body and notice the more subtle signals within my body and make all the appropriate life changes and do even deeper healing work again. And so I share this with you because I know as a mum what it's like to be emotionally struggling, to feel like you're broken, that maybe there's just something wrong with you and you can't be fixed. But I'm here to share that firstly, we're not broken and there's no such thing as being fixed, but we can heal. We can heal from our past and be free from our past, as well as learn how to navigate our nervous systems in a healthy way so that we can create more of the future that we want and have more regulation and closeness and connection in our relationships. That our history does not decide our future. We can absolutely move forward from that with the right approach. And so I hope that through sharing my story and sharing my journey, that it gives other mothers out there the inspiration and the hope that maybe they feel like they need if they feel a bit lost, or like maybe the problem's them. Like the problem is not you, it's that the world isn't set up for mothers. And so we need to find a different approach to healing. And that's why I created my specialized 3-step approach to helping women and mothers to heal.
Oh, that's beautiful. I guess I would like to know more about your 3 steps, if you don't mind telling more.
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts firstly with awareness. How aware are we? And so we start with getting to know the nervous system and really tuning into, well, what is our nervous system doing? Understanding our nervous system and its three different states, which I won't go into because we've only got a short time today. But there are three nervous system states. One of which is regulated, where we're most connected to self, we're connected to others, we feel safe, and we feel this is when we're connected to heart, higher self, something bigger than us, hope, possibilities, all those types of things. So that's what we call the green or the regulated state. The next state is our sympathetic nervous system, which many of us might be familiar with, and in the language I use, that's the yellow. But that's our stress state. That's stress, anxiety, overwhelm, fight or flight. And so this is in the olden days where you would only be activated into stress under the threat of an animal or maybe a threat to the tribe or something like that, but you would return back to homeostasis or calm after the threat was finished. But in modern day life, we perceive constant stresses, whether it's getting the kids to school on time, not being late, answering the emails, getting to work, looking good in the eyes of others. Like, there's all these things that create constant stress. So many of the women that come to me, they're in this stress state about 80% of the time. Right, and they're all in their
Mhm.
heads. They're not really in their body. They might be aware of some anxiety and some tension maybe, but they are in their heads trying to think their way through everything, which is what I used to do as well. And then the other state, that is the red, which is where we kind of tap out. The perceived threats around us are too big, and so like an animal that's faced with a threat that's too large to fight or too large to run from, they tap out and they play dead, right? So for us, we withdraw, we immobilize, we shut down, and we go, you know what, it's too hard, I just can't do anything right now. And so that would look more like your depression, chronic fatigue, or just the not being able to get out of bed, no energy, or just wanting to withdraw from the world or shut down. And this can even look like dissociation, where we just dissociate from our feelings altogether. And so those are the three kind of nervous system states. So firstly, we want to get a good gauge of where we're at, and we want to build a really good connection to our body and notice the internal signals that signal to us which state we're in. And we also want to connect really strongly with the things that help us to return to regulation or keep connected to some kind of regulation. So that's really around the first step, and understanding trauma and how that has wired your nervous system to respond the way that it currently does. So all of that fits into the awareness piece. So that's the first step. So just before I move on to the next one, is there any questions on that one?
Well, I've heard a chiropractor say that on some patients that they see, they don't ever see it come out of the stress or the fight or flight. That patient is constantly in there, and it's a large percentage of patients. Right.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah, I definitely can understand that. It's yeah, just with our busy lives, and like you said, the mind is so intent on going over and over and over and over everything, or the subconscious is, or whatever word we use for that. Um, and
yeah, yeah, 100%. And this is what I see too with many of the women that come to me. They're pretty much stuck in that stress state, and they have very little connection to any form of regulation. And that was me too. And that's why I do this work, because I was all in my head I was doing all the right things, and I had it figured out, but it wasn't translating into the body. So we really need to get into our body to learn how to create more regulation.
right. Yeah, I find that in biofield work, I find anxiety, like say PTSD. I mean, that would be a common one, but it forms around a halo, like around your brain, like what a concussion might. I mean, it's the same type of formation, same type of energy, only a different cause. but it doesn't have to be PTSD. You don't have to have been in the war or anything. Common people have it. Children have it, right? They have panic attacks and anxiety disorders, or just because we're in that constant fight or flight mode, you have all this dissonant, um, stuck energy around your crown. And I find it too, I often end up doing, we call it a cerebrum cerebellum reset. So with tuning forks, you tune the corpus callosum, or the tissue that connects the two hemispheres of your brain, and bring coherence to that tissue so that the hemispheres can communicate, and then you can tap into your inner self.
Very good. That sounds very intriguing.
Well, I mean, we're using different words to describe the same thing, right?
Yeah,
The same
a
process,
hundred,
yes.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's that's so interesting that that something like PTSD forms, as a halo around the head, because yeah, I think we are so stuck in our heads because when we are in stress, our thoughts are racing, and our mind,
Mhm.
it just recycles the same thoughts, creates more stress, anxiety, worry,
Yeah.
and we're not connected to our prefrontal cortex, which is our good thinking brain and our problem solving brain when we're in that
Yeah.
stress state. So it makes sense.
And that's probably why it just dawned on me. Sometimes I don't have much difficulty with it anymore, but occasionally, and it's usually at night when my defenses are down, right? That the cycle keeps going where there's a tiny bit of worry or anxiety about something, not enough to make me upset or anything, but it has to be in the subconscious there, so it keeps playing a scenario over and over, where I have a choice or something, or something's happening. But just from what you had said, makes sense that it's at night, because then we're not in the frontal cortex right at night, right?
Um, in the prefrontal cortex, as I understand it, that's our problem solving and our good thinking brain.
Mhm.
That's where we are, when we're regulated, we're connected to that. I'm not sure about whether it turns on or off at night. I think it's something we have access to when we're
Mhm.
most regulated.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
No, that
yeah,
makes sense. Yeah.
and this is why a lot of kids have difficulty. So it's where we learn. This is how we learn new information. So this is why kids who struggle with anxiety find it so difficult to learn at school, is because school doesn't feel like a safe place for them. Therefore, they can't learn. So we need safety to be able to take on board new information, right, and to be able to
Mhm.
learn, because it's only in safety that our prefrontal cortex is turned on.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
So step two then.
So step two is attunement, and this is deep self-attunement on a number of levels. So this is how, so I mentioned, when we're younger, or throughout our lives, we may have trauma that wires our nervous system, and through our life's experiences, our nervous system is wired in a certain way. And trauma can happen along the way. And Gabor Mate talks about how trauma is what happens in the lack of an empathetic witness. So if anything happens that the young child or the person perceives as traumatic, but they don't have anyone to share it with or talk through it with, that's what actually creates the trauma more than the event itself. And so keeping in mind that throughout our lives, little things happen. They can be little traumas. So there's big T traumas and little T traumas. Little T trauma, Gabor Mate talks about, are the things that didn't happen, like it can be neglect, not having a safe space to express yourself, not having a safe space to express emotions, having to work for love, and all those kinds of things. They are little T traumas. And then our big T traumas are the things that happen to us. That can be the abuse and the bad things that happen to us throughout our lives. And so there's many times throughout our life where trauma may have formed. And so attunement is being able to, when you're struggling in your life today, it's being able to tune into the part of the body where the trauma is stored, and then essentially tuning into the moment or the younger part that is holding that trauma. And so when we're traumatized in any way, when we're younger, a part of us gets stuck at that age with those perceptions, with that world view and everything. And they continue to kind of, in a way, run the show and to try and protect us. And even now. And so when we're struggling in an area of our life now, what we can do is attune to the part that's kind of running the show. And the deep self attunement is learning the skill to be able to tune into that part. Um, we find out how old it is, how did it get its job, like, so usually what happened, or there'll be some kind of memory, but then also finding out what it needed and then catching it up with today. So letting that part of us know how old we are today, because they don't know that. That's why they're still trying to help out and protect. But we can also be whatever and give to them whatever they didn't have or need at the time where the trauma formed. So that can create healing for that part, and they can release and no longer feel the need to do that job that they're doing now to try and protect us. And so it's quite complex. I've tried to talk
Mhm.
through it at as much as surface level as I can, but it's quite a deep process, and always is surprising me, the parts that I connect with myself, but also the parts my clients connect with. And it's different to inner child work in that this approach understands that different parts come from different ages and different stages. So there are parts that could be young adults, like 21. There are parts that can be teenagers. There can be parts that can be 10 or 8. And then there can be parts in the womb as well, right?
Uh,
And so
Yes.
when we deeply learn this process of attunement, we can create healing for those parts so that we can create more congruence in our nervous system and be able
Mhm.
to move forward with more ease. And so
Yeah.
that's the first part of the attunement that we do in my program, which is, like I said, always surprising, not just to me, but to my clients, of like, oh, I had this memory and I'd never connected it with that. And just how it shows up now is always so interesting. But once we go back to that moment, attune, give that, be like the empathetic witness to that part and give them whatever
Mhm.
they needed, it creates a lot of healing and allows that part to release. And from there, we can move forward more easily. And we can do that with any part of us that's coming up today. We can work with them to create that healing so we can move forward more easily. So that's the
Mhm.
first part of attunement. And then the second part is learning how to deeply attune to our needs. And so most women that I work with, there's three problems when it comes to needs. They either don't know how to identify their needs because they're so disconnected from themselves, from their history and whatever they had to do to survive in the world up until now. They can be quite disconnected from themselves and their needs. So they might not even know what their needs are. The next problem is that even if they know what their needs are, they might have a lot of trouble expressing them. Again, based on their history, maybe it hasn't been safe to express needs in the past, especially as women. And then the third part is allowing ourselves to receive. And again, there's a few blocks for women around receiving, like not wanting to be a burden, not wanting
Mhm.
to owe anyone anything, not being able to rely on anyone, always being let down or disappointed. Like, there's all these things that come up when it comes to allowing ourselves to receive. And so we help, like, I help them to learn how to attune to their deepest needs, communicate those needs, and allow themselves to receive for those needs to be met. And so I feel for women that's just another big important piece, because we're taught from such a young age that it's our job to look after others, that our needs don't matter, and that they go behind everyone else. That our most important job is to self-sacrifice and put everybody
Mhm.
else first. And
Right.
so if we're truly going to heal and move forward in a healthy way, we need to be able to learn that it's safe to have needs and it's safe to have those needs met.
Well, and it kind of goes back to trauma, like we were talking about. Um, I was in an abusive marriage, and it was like when I got out of the situation, finally, I it had been good to get out of it years before, but I couldn't. But I could get out when I had a baby. So I couldn't do it for me, but I could do it for the baby. So we got out. But it's like I didn't know who I was afterwards. I didn't know anything I liked. I couldn't make a decision. I didn't know, I just couldn't. I was just kind of lost.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so sorry you went through that, and I understand. I left an abusive relationship when I was pregnant with my daughter as well, and yeah, it's hard to reconnect with yourself when you've been in a relationship where maybe there hasn't been that agency or that choice to be who you are.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah,
takes time.
it does. It very does. The first step of step two, where you were talking about attuning to yourself, your own emotional needs, it reminds me of what I've heard and what I see in my work. Often I call it soul retrieval, or often anymore, I believe I think of it as heart retrieval, because I find those ages of consciousness, like you're talking about, they're from different ages. They think we're still that age. They don't realize that. And but most of the time, not always, most of the time I clear it at the heart chakra in the biofield. Whereas, once in a while it's at the third eye or something, which makes sense that it would be around the brain in anxiety or worry. But it's so well, two things. It's so sad that we splinter, right? We fragment. But it's also so um such a beautiful experience, right? To gain that awareness of the inner child within us, right? And to love into that who you were at that age, who still exist as part of you, and that healing. I know have found a number of times where it's like when I tune into that and love into that little girl, it's like wherever she was, she jumps up and runs into my heart, or runs into my solar plexus or something. It's like we merge and become one. It's so beautiful, and um, then they're happy afterwards, right? And you can feel their happiness within you. It's a beautiful thing.
Mm. It is, and see, this is the beauty of the human mind, right? Because our mind doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. And so when we connect in with them and we have that interaction with them, it's real. It's real for them, it's real for us. And so
Hmm.
that integration that results, like that's also a real thing, and it's amazing the release and the sensations in the body clear. Like it's just amazing what actually happens through this process, and it sounds like you do a similar thing in a different kind of way.
Yeah, it's different. The biofield is spirit, basically. That's, I mean, we're spirit beings, right? The biofield is just all the light waves and light particles that haven't been condensed as much together, close together as the body. So we're all, our whole being is spirit. And so I work in spirit, and spirit shows me where these things are located and where they're stuck in the biofield, right? Where those little pieces of consciousness are stuck. And it's a conversation then to convince them, I guess, to show them that you do love them, that you are safe, that they can trust you, and that you want them, right? Because they splintered because they weren't wanted, right? They didn't feel wanted.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I say to my clients. We can be the love, acceptance, recognition, you know, all those things that part of us didn't have. Like we never go into this process wanting to fix or get rid of. We go in always with curiosity and compassion, because we understand that whatever's happening is happening for good reason. It makes sense. Our job is just to figure out how it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then once we do that, then yeah, it does. It creates so much healing. Whereas when people do go in with this approach of okay, let's sort this out, it doesn't work because the parts can sense that they're not accepted or wanted, or you know, And we really want to come in with that compassion, that curiosity, that complete unconditional love and acceptance for whatever they've tried to help us with, or however they've influenced us. It's come from necessity in some way. And when we understand that and come in through that understanding, it just clears, and we're able to connect more easily. The part opens up and shares a lot more with us, rather than being guarded, because those younger parts of us, they can sense if it's not safe, and so we can be
Mhm.
that safety for all the parts of us. Like there's, Richard Schwartz, who's the creator of internal family systems. He has a book that's called No Bad Parts. There are no bad parts that exist within us, because they all exist as a result of something that happened at some point. And so nothing about us is bad. It was functional when it happened. If it's not functional
Mm.
now, then our job is to really work with that part and to help it resolve and release.
Now, in your work in finding the lost fragments of ourselves, have you found that we carry ancestral fragments too, or you're just mainly concentrating on your own at that part and
In
as
this
part
as
of that?
Yeah, in this aspect of the work, so far from my experience, it's always been, at earliest within the womb. But another aspect of my work where we heal ancestral trauma, that works in a completely different way to
Okay.
this, because it
Mhm.
recognizes that as women, we've been suppressed for thousands of years, and whatever, and so every part, like you were talking earlier about energy, and yes, we are energy, and we're in a physical body, and there's a
Mhm.
difference between being in a female body and a male body. And a female body comes with its own set of inherited trauma. And so do a little bit of work on this in my group program, but in order to heal it deeply, it requires its own process, which understands that it didn't start with us, and it potentially started thousands and thousands of years ago. So even if we were to try and move, you know, backwards, um, we probably couldn't go far enough back to heal it, because as women we've been suppressed for thousands of years. And I talk about this kind of, or what I kind of share in my program is how as women there's many different archetypes that we take on. And so there's the good girl archetype, what it means to be a good girl, quiet, submissive, and all those things. The people pleasing archetype. There's the martyr who sacrifices herself without recognition to give to everybody else. There's what we believe it means to be a good mother, what we believe it means to be a good wife. And then another archetype, there's the successful woman. So what it means to be in the world, to be a successful woman, which is really the doing it all. And then finally, there's the super independent, or the independent superwoman, who feels as though she needs to do everything herself. And she had to learn to do everything herself, because she learned she couldn't trust anyone, she couldn't rely on anyone, and if it was going to be done, then she's going to do it herself. But unfortunately, this archetype is mostly a lot of the women who come to me, and it was very much myself as well, where we're so self-reliant, we do so much that it's going to lead to burnout sooner or later. And so these archetypes recognize that as women, we carry on behaviors that maybe we have never questioned, because it's how it has always been. Because as women, we've been treated differently, to men for thousands of years. And so we need to work with that aspect of the trauma and the suppression and all the really common issues that females have. We need to work with those separately at a deeper level.
Okay, yeah. So what about step three? Or is that was
Yes.
that in step three? Or that was
Um,
yeah.
Step three is around alignment. So to create more alignment, yes, I can take the women that I work with through that process of deep healing of those ancestral wounds. But also alignment is about aligning our current behaviors with our vision, having a compelling vision for the future, having a deep connection to our purpose and what drives us, and then also having alignment in our relationships, mostly through our communication and our connection and the level of connection that we say we want in our relationships, being able to make sure that what we say we want matches up with what we're doing, and creating the practices that support that. So that's step three of alignment.
Nice. So you help them look in to themselves, right, and find what it is they want, where they're at, and what they want, and steps to move toward that what they want.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
how to be present. So, one of my mentors, Maston Kipp, who taught the nervous system work and around the attunement or the parts work. So he's the one of the leading trauma informed coaches. He talks about being able to work within all three time zones, which is the past, being present with what is, but also moving into a compelling future as well. And so we need to be able to work within all three time zones in order to create the life that we want. Because if we ignore the past and override and just try to do all the right things to create what we want, we might be able to create what we want, but it won't be sustainable. And we need to be able to be present with anything that shows up for us. So we need to know how to be with big feelings when they come up. We need to really understand, how can we befriend this? How can I embrace this experience? Because it's part of life. Like we can't go through life only feeling happy. We can't go through life with an expectation that we're never going to be triggered, because we always, if we're growing, there are things that are going to come up that are going to trigger us. So it's more about, well, how do we be with this trigger? How do we befriend this trigger? How do we heal, the past, if it's looking like it's coming more from our history? And then how do we move into the future, but without overriding the past? So we need to be able to work safely within all three time zones to be able to create that future that we want. And so it brings, his approach brings all three together, which I find really helpful, because a lot of life coaching just focuses on the future, and it disregards that the past still has a significant impact on how we behave today, because our nervous system is wired from our past. So when we don't understand our behaviors and why did I do this again? Oh, why am I still stuck?
Yeah.
We need to work with the nervous system and whatever's stuck there, right? If we just override and try to think our way through it and be positive through it, it catches up with us sooner or later. So the healthiest and most sustainable way to move forward and create the future of our dreams is being able to be present with difficult feelings and knowing how to navigate our triggers, being able to heal and work with what's happened in the past, but also, having that compelling vision and that connection to our purpose, so that we can move forward successfully as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful steps. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Very nice. Yeah. So outside of so you studied the nervous regulation system, but before that you had like the coaching experience, or I'm just kind of clarifying, what was your background when you came into it? Like,
Before the nervous system work, my background, so the thing that actually really helped me to shift and heal the past, in terms of shifting my anger, my anxiety, feeling like there was something wrong with me, feeling broken, the guilt, the shame, failure, like all those things that I struggled with my whole life, not good enough, unworthy.
mhm,
Those things shifted on the deepest level for me through a modality, a therapy that I use with my clients called Creatrix. And that was created by a woman for women to help us heal the ancestral trauma
mhm,
from the past. And then once I had that, then it was again because that created more regulation in the nervous system automatically, and this is what I find with my clients. So once we heal those perceptions from the past that create all those stresses, then I was more regulated. My clients
Mhm.
were more regulated as a result of that as well. And then the nervous system work is really about getting to know ourselves on a deep level. Because if we have had all that past trauma, we often, as you mentioned, we don't know ourselves very well. And so it's like, well, we're not good at being in our bodies because we've spent our whole life in our head trying to problem solve our way out of things. And so what I find is that taking my clients through the nervous system work as well is that just helps them to create the future that, their ideal future, because they can work with anything that comes up. So anything that we haven't covered in the deep healing through creatrix, they know how to work with through the attunement, right? And it's usually really easy because we've already healed a lot of the major stuff. um, they develop a relationship with their nervous system, so they're able to pick up subtle stresses and make necessary adjustments in their life, because we might be still holding on to unhealthy relationships. We might still be in the habit of not speaking up, even though now it's safe to. So there's a lot of habitual things that we need to notice and change in order to move forward into the future happily and successfully as well. And so the nervous system work, will help prevent that burnout, because you'll notice when you're stressed, it helps us to create healthy habits in our lives so that we maintain a good level of regulation or connection to regulation, or we know how to come back to regulation. We also learn how to navigate our triggers. So knowing we will be triggered sometimes, but okay, how do we be with that instead of letting it run the show? And then always having that connection to our compelling vision for the future, to our purpose. That's what helps us to move forward into that continued growth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for asking for that clarification, because yeah, I think there's those two aspects to my work, and
Mhm.
they do sit somewhat separately, yet um, we need I feel we need both. We need
Uh-huh.
something that helps us to effectively heal female specific past trauma, but then we also need um, healthy ways and healthy tools of how to get to know ourselves again, how to
Mhm.
connect in deeply with ourselves, and then how to navigate whatever's happening inside of us as we move into the future. I feel that both are important, both very effective when used separately, but I feel when we do both, that's for me how I have found the ongoing growth and
Mhm.
evolution in my journey. That's what's been most helpful, is to have both.
Right, right. Um, it, um, I guess it comes to my mind how closely related. Like it's easy in some ways to see how closely related our spirit body, our aura or biofield is to our body, because it's just for me, I can understand it by science or anatomy, right? It's just becoming closer and closer, denser and denser, so it becomes a body where you can actually see it. But it takes it's also the same. It's just a different aspect, and like in though so much of what I see is like, we have a physical problem with our body, and it was you can find in your body itself where it was caused, from stress, or emotional stress or psychological stress, or sure, wear and tear, physical stress too. But even at those times, the body didn't heal itself, usually because it either both wasn't supported, but also was predispositioned to injury because of all our habits, right? That form the what we call stuck energy, or layers and pockets of um, dissonance within the biofield that are like roadblocks to our divine flow, right? How we were made. And so then you find a path around it to go, just like it, you went down, well, like your people are doing around you now. Probably you go down one road and it's flooded. So you have to go down a different road or something, right? Or a tree down or something. But then beyond the emotional, most of the emotional difficulties we deal with are caused, I feel anyway, because of a spiritual dissonance. Um, I mean, I'm talking about this in a like spiritual and emotional thing, but you're explaining it. Seems to me the same thing, um, by the nervous system, right? And it's like, but the emotional thing of not knowing who we are as, and not being able to tune into um, the spirit that we're made of, and our own self, our own desires, right? Then it creates the dissonance that leads into the fear, or leads into the unworthiness, or these other, all sorts of emotions. And I meant the emotions we have because we're human, and we're made to receive that information, right? But it's how we handle the emotion that causes all the dissonance, right? And
Yeah.
and so this spiritual dissonance is showing up as nervous system dysregulation, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it from what you've explained. I think definitely, um, energetically, I think this is the beautiful thing about different work is, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and as I learn more, is what I learn is we are all essentially trying to achieve the same thing, right? Which is
Yes.
balance and health in the
Yeah.
body. And there's just all these different ways of doing it. And it sounds like you're working more on the energetics side of
Mm-hmm.
things, which I love. I love energetics. I love things that are woo woo. Like, I'm a very spiritual person as well, and also there's a part of me that's very practical.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I know, when I was younger, I did energy healing courses, but because it was hard to measure, hard to see, hard to feel, hard to notice the real difference,
Mm-hmm.
that's why I went more towards things where I could, kind of see and measure
Measure.
the
Mm-hmm.
difference, so to speak.
Yeah.
Um, I think definitely if we are spiritually disconnected, then that's like, I believe we're spiritual beings as well. And if we're not connected to, and like, I mean, not everyone will agree or believe in this. I'm sure your people probably will, but we don't exist by accident, and there is something out there that is much larger, much bigger
Mm-hmm.
than we are. And I love Joe Dispenza's work as well, and
Mm-hmm.
so much is tied up
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
energetics. And so I think it's important to work with a way that feels right for us. And like, I love Joe's work. I've done Joe's work over the years. Um, and I think, yeah, and I also, I don't know if you've heard of it, but for my kids, we have a practitioner who, she does this thing. I don't know what it's called, but it's NES, and she gives us these infoceuticals, which are these clear drops, which I don't know, but they all do different things in the body to
Yeah.
change the vibration of different things, and heal things you know that are picked up by the machine that we put our hands on, and it does a reading. And like, so I definitely think there's value in doing doing all the things that help us. And it's interesting to hear from you, that you're saying, yeah, that what I've explained through the nervous system, you're seeing energetically. And that
Mm-hmm.
makes so much
Yes.
sense to me, because we're going to see it at these different levels, of course. And I think, sickness in the body is definitely caused by not only trauma, but by energetic imbalances and a
Mm.
disconnection from self.
Yeah.
And I think we need to definitely connect in with a power that's bigger than us, than and has a higher wisdom than we do, because we are humans having a human experience. And if science could have worked everything out by now, it would have. I think there's a lot in quantum physics, which Joe Dispenza talks all about. And there's, there'll be evidence that, with water, if it's energetically charged, right, that, that has its benefits as well. So I
Mhm.
absolutely love the idea that energetically what you're doing matches up with what I'm describing in the nervous system.
Yeah, it's so awesome to me to see so many and hear about so many modalities that, like you said, we're all after the same end, right? In healing people, or in, that's not quite the right word, in restoring. I see it as a restoration, right? We're restoring our divine flow, and in many ways, and just because we're also individual people, we're going to be attracted to or hear about um, different types, and there's so many because there's so many people, and we relate to them in different ways, and find our journey through whichever it relates to us, or like find, do one and then fit two together, kind of, right, to create a path that way, and that
Yeah.
can help other people.
Yeah, and I think it's always like because of my upbringing, um, I can't even say it's because of my upbringing, but when I was young and my parents were telling me, this is the only true religion, I was like, that doesn't make sense. Like, surely God loves more than just our people. Surely God loves all the good people, not just the one that are in this particular religion. Like, it never made sense to me that there was only one truth. I feel that truth is in all around us in different things, and we need to be open to different approaches. And I've always, if anyone kind of says to me this is the only approach, I automatically, and it was, I think I was about 11 when I questioned it with my parents. I'm like, "It- could that be right? Like, we're so diverse and there is so much available to us in this universe that I think it would be silly not to be open to all the different things and to pass judgment before we've really understood how different things work." Like, I think, yeah, I just think there's so many amazing things out there that work in so many amazing ways. And I feel that we will always be attracted to the right approach for us.
Yes, well, I think so too. Yes, definitely. Yes, that it's I think I see it as magnetism. I guess that would be the energetics again, right? The magnetism of the whole attracting, wanting each of us, right? Wanting to gather all of us into that flow with it. And then there's the magnetism of the parts, each of the parts for the whole. And I think it's that magnetism, that attraction, or that love between us all, that pulls us to what we're going to find, as well as angels, or some people see it as higher self, your higher self, guiding you to find what you need, so that eventually you're going to step into that healing, right? Or that's the goal, right? If you're, and often often we have to hurt bad enough so that you're willing to step out of the gunk that you're not happy with, right? And that
Oh,
keeps you down.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. And when I was in at my point of desperation, I put it out to the universe in a way. I'm like, just show me the way. This is what I want. This is what I believe is possible. I want to change. I'll do anything to change. Just please show me the way. And that's where the right things came into my energetic sphere, so to speak. That's where the right things, when we make a decision, the universe conspires to make it happen. And I think, that will be different for each individual, and just to be open to however that happens for us, I think, is so important.
Well, and exciting too, right?
Yeah.
And creating, and in doing so, right, we create new ways, or new, parts of ways that you fit together that other people can't do just the same way, or can't say it the same way, or relate to the same people that each of us do.
Yeah.
So it's to reach everybody, or for the highest good of all, I guess, as the saying goes.
Yeah, that's right. And like there's I think there's studies that show this. There's like 27 ways to do dishes, right?
That's funny.
But I don't know the number, but there's lots. It's in the tent. Like there's a lot of ways to do dishes, right? And if we get stuck on, no, this is the only right way, we could miss out on other ways that save us time or are more efficient, or like there are so many different ways to do things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with you. I found it, for me anyway, that although I've always had great faith and great yearning to know God or spirit, however you want to say it, that organized religion has done, on a whole, has done a great disservice to many people at the same time.
Unfortunately, but I don't
It is.
I agree, and I wouldn't let it stop you from believing in a higher power, because
Absolutely. Mhm.
that definitely exists. And so in whatever form that feels like you resonate with, whether it's source, whether it's God, whether it's higher power, like, I think definitely allowing yourself to be open to a higher power is part of the journey. Like, it's
Mhm.
I I would be lost without that, had I not had that driving force underlying. So even though with my parents, even though I didn't continue with their religion, my spiritual journey never ever stopped.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, gosh, my life would have been a lot different if I would have started questioning at age 11 instead of age 45 or something. I would have got a lot had more. You have a head start.
And we all do things at the right time for us, and
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
that's where we do need to always have that compassion for ourselves, and just
Yeah.
trust that we had our awakening, or whatever you want to call it, at the right time for us, and that everything leading up to that is part of what adds to our journey, and adds to our, what we add to the whole. Like, yeah, so be
Yeah.
kind to yourself,
Yes.
Carla. Like, I think
Absolutely. Yeah.
some people never awaken, unfortunately, and that's sad for them, but at the same time, they don't know any different, and they're happy in their own existence. And I'm really happy for those people, and I wished to be one of them for many years.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe another lifetime we come back as a in a life that we're totally happy with the whole time.
Right? Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't understand why. I was like, I remember this so clearly as a young person, probably still in my late teens. It's like, and early adulthood. Like, how and how? Like, how do they not notice? Like, for me back then, it was how hard the world is, that life is suffering, that it's like, this is, like, I'm like, how do people not notice and feel all these things that I feel? How can they be so happy when I had so much of that inner conflict and deep unhappiness within me, and I always felt like that I must be missing something, that yeah, they had this happiness, and yet it seemed so far removed from me. And they didn't, like, people who never questioned anything, they just went about their lives, and everything was good and fine and dandy. And it's like, why? Like, yeah, I know that
Yeah.
that was something that really threw me for many years.
Right. Or I had this experience. Um, I don't not sure whether it was an ancestral remembrance or whether it was a past life remembrance. It was in hypnosis, and I'll just call it an experience anyway. And it was like I had been this American Indian or some other native type woman, and I was also her daughter at a different time. And but the thing is, she was experiencing in her life something that I always thought would be wonderful. It was like she was calm. Something, I saw something major happen and she stayed calm and received it. And then something awesome happened and she was calm and received it. She was just level. And I had always thought that would be perfect, right? But my reaction surprised me to this experience. It was like, I can't do that. I have to know the joy. So therefore, I have to know the sorrow too, right? I have to know the pain because I'm here to know joy.
Yeah.
And she didn't feel either. And so it's just different perspective on how to look at things that we think are good. But that kind of goes along with your cycle breaking in some ways, right? Our patterns of thought, or what we think we should do or think we should be, who we think we should be. And you want to talk more about your cycle breakers group for moms, or?
Yeah, so I have a free group, Cycle Breaking Mothers Hub, and I do a few lives a week in there, usually just sharing some helpful information on how to break cycles, on emotional regulation, on nervous system health, and all the fun things. And yeah, I also run a free 5-day challenge for any woman, any woman or mum who's wanting to break a cycle, if she wants to really break a cycle for her kids or for her family, so that she can show up being the mum she imagined she could be. And if there's things that are in her way that are stopping her from that, that's something that I offer. So you can find that in the group as well, how to sign up for that. But yeah, really, I think mostly if you are struggling, I just want you to know that you're not alone, and there are ways through it, and there are many different ways, as Carla and I have discussed. And just never give up on yourself. Like, believe that if you believe that something better is possible for you, you will find a way to it. And so if I can just leave you with that, um, yeah, I think just know that there is a way through everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Beautiful.
yeah.
So where do you see yourself doing or being in 10 years?
Gosh, that's a long way away. Carla's still doing this kind of work. I don't plan on ever retiring. I definitely would love to help as many mothers as I can, share the awareness, share the knowledge, share my programs to as many women as possible. And yeah, I guess, I haven't really thought about in 10 years' time, obviously still happily married. My boys will be 24 and 23 by then. They'll probably still be at home. um, and, my daughter will be, gosh, she'd be 31 by then. That's wow. So I could be a grandmother, although I am already a step grandma. I've got 3 step grandchildren. um, but yeah, I think just continuing to learn, continuing to deepen my knowledge, continuing to be open to better ways of growing, but hopefully, having some type of platform, that is reaching more people, that is sharing this wisdom, that nothing is permanent, our suffering isn't forever, there is a way through, there are many ways to healing. And emotions aren't bad. All emotions are something that is part of this beautiful life experience, and we don't need to reject or get rid of any of them. We just need to know how to work with them and befriend them. And so yeah, just really continuing to share the love, share the message, and really wanting to create more healing for mothers whilst their children are still young, ideally, because this is when we have the greatest impact. Again, Gabor Mate talks about that attachment relationship and how important it is. So the more regulated our mums are and the more present they're able to be with these little people, the better the future will be for our world. So I would love to see in 10 years more, like I'd love to advocate for more support towards mothers, more honoring of this really important role that women play in raising our children, and more support to go to mothers so that they can do that role well, and just for more recognition and value to be placed on that, because our mothers in a way are the future, because without the mothers there's no more children, and without securely attached relationships then we just have more traumatized people, which causes more hurt, pain, and suffering in the world. So, the more mothers we can heal, the bigger difference we can make to the future, I feel.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I just realized when you were talking, I totally skipped reading your biography to people to know more about you. And I had a question. I'm going to read a little bit of this now in case whoever hasn't gathered from what you're saying, what you do. Naomi Galliano is a trauma informed coach who helps ambitious mothers break free from the emotional roller coaster of negative self talk, emotional overwhelm, and unworthiness by healing the deep intergenerational and childhood trauma stored in the nervous system. And that she believes that healing mothers is the key to healing the world. And her life's work and mission are rooted in helping women reconnect with their authentic selves so they can live life with joy, ease, and purpose. And but I had a question. Could you explain more the trauma informed? I'm guessing, in some circles that's a very well known term. It was a new term to me. So
Yeah, so trauma informed just recognizes that in my approach with clients, that I recognize that trauma plays a role in how we are, that there's no behavior, action, or deed that can't be explained somehow by our history. So everything about us makes sense based on our history, and every adaptation or every way that we are, even though it may not be presenting very well or in a very healthy way, it can be quite destructive at times. Understanding that behind everything there is a history there, that if we understand the history, we'll make sense of the behavior. And that's why it's so important to heal the past trauma so that we can change the behaviors, so that so that we can, I think for most people it's wanting to be congruent in that they want to, most of us, we want to do better, but we're stuck in these patterns that prevent us from doing better. But when we're trauma informed, we know there's good reason for that. And so we can approach all of that with that love and compassion and acceptance, so that we can work with it more easily and create healing around that to move forward.
beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell people where to find you, like your website or social media links and things?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Facebook, Naomi Galliano. So you can find me there. There's also, if you go to my profile there and click on my cover photo, there's a link there to join my group, the Cycle Breaking Mothers Hub. I do have a website, just naomigalliano.com.au. And I'm on Instagram under the handle Heal the Mother. Heal the Mother? I think it's Heal the Mother. I don't use Instagram that much. I will get on there more. But yeah, Heal the Mother Coaching. Heal the Mother
There you go.
underscore coaching is
Yeah,
is the Instagram handle that you can find me under as well.
very good. And just one thing to end, we had talked about, I guess when I first contacted you about being a guest, and you had mentioned that because this week had a full moon, that you do new moon and full moon rituals. Could you tell us about your full moon ritual, or tell us one that people might like to do or something?
I don't have a full moon ritual, but I do
Okay.
do a new moon intention setting ceremony. So at the new moon, it's a great time to set new intentions. So dark moon happens the night before the new moon. Dark
Mhm.
moon is a great time to sit and reflect upon the month that's been and have a look at what is it that we're wanting to let go of. So we can at that point write down our letting go of list and burn that once it's done, and we can let go of whatever we want to from the previous cycle. And then we want to set our intentions for what we want to call into the new cycle. And so that can be calling in healthier relationships, calling in more love, more peace, more healing, whatever it is that we want to call in. And so we sit and reflect upon those intentions at the new moon and kind of, I, I light a little candle, I play some nice music as I reflect upon what I would like to call in. There's a teacher that I follow, her name is Jane Hardwick Collins, and she says when you're intention setting to always to understand that when you set your intentions, that whatever you're calling in, whatever is in the way of that, will come in to be cleared first. So we want to be very deliberate in how we set our intentions. For example, you wouldn't want to say, I want to let go of all toxic relationships. You might want to, because then all of a sudden you might find all these relationships just ending suddenly in really horrible ways. So it could be more around, I want to let go of toxic relationship patterns, or I want to heal toxic relationship patterns. So just being really careful with your words there around your intention setting. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So be kind of really mindful and intentional with what you're calling in. But yeah, then write down that list, put it out, hold your candle, put it out there to the universe, blow the candle out. That's what I would do around my new moon intention setting. That letting go of is really nice because we reflect upon what's no longer serving us. And then that calling in just helps us to have that focus for the month ahead. So, and one of my
Mhm.
intentions, from the beginning of the year, because it was a new moon on the 1st of January, was to be a guest on at least 10 podcasts this year. And I've had a few different invites because I want to have more conversations like this. So it is a really powerful practice just to slowly, create that change that you're wanting to see in your life. I feel it's very important. So if we do that around the new moon, and then the full moon will reflect usually what's coming up to be cleared so that our intentions can come to fruition. So if the full moon is a little bit turbulent, it could just be, well, this is the things that are in the way of what you're wanting to call in.
Mhm.
They're coming up to be healed and cleared. So that's what the full moon
Right.
can indicate there.
Yeah, for sure it is. I think I was just saying that to someone this morning. how the
Yeah,
how the sun, moon, and stars, their integration with themselves and with our energies is for our highest good, and they bring the energies we need to have these things come up and clear at the right time they need to clear. Right.
that's right. That's right. And I don't know about you, Carla, but I know that this past month or two has been pretty energetically wobbly for a lot of people, just with all the planets aligning and doing whatever they're doing. It feels as though humanity's going through a big shift at the moment, a big up leveling, and there's a lot coming up to be cleared. So I don't know if you're finding that in your world as well, but it's been very interesting times.
Yeah, it's exciting to see what will happen. At the same time, of course, there's days that are exciting and days that are really yummy. And then there's other days you wake up and it's just like the old stories come back to bite you over and over. Right?
I was
Real patterns.
curious, does that happen for you the week before the new moon?
I think it happens more with the new moon. That I think with the full
Yeah.
moon, I'm usually more peaceful and connected feeling, and I don't know if loving's the right word, but connected is a real good word. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think things come up at the new moon.
Yeah, perfect. And so, as women, when we no longer have a menstrual cycle, we cycle with the moon, and it makes sense for you that things come up for
Hmm.
clearing or letting go at the new moon because that's energetically what we're doing at that time. And what you just described at the full moon, which is also in menstrual cycle known as our ovulation time, that's where we feel more
Hmm.
connected, more out there. We want to, we're open and loving, and we're feeling really good. So it makes sense what you've just described. Really kind of matches what makes sense for you to be feeling based on those moon cycles. So
Yeah, interesting. I hadn't looked at it that way. Yeah. Huh.
yeah,
Good
it's
to think about. Yeah, how nature is designed for us, right? It's just another great example.
it is, yeah, absolutely, yeah. And women historically, thousands of years ago, were very connected to the cycles of
Yeah,
nature. Yeah,
for sure. All right, Naomi, I think we'll end there tonight. And it's been a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it thoroughly, and
yeah.
glad you
Thank
could
you.
be here, and glad again that you escaped without too much upset from the cyclone that came near you. So
Thank you, Carla. And again, thank you for the invite onto your podcast and for sharing your space with me and asking really amazing questions, that gave me the opportunity to share. So, and also for sharing about yourself and what you do energetically, because it's great to hear how it all kind of matches up. We're all
it is.
just we're doing the same work, just in
Yeah,
a different way.
yeah. I find that over and over. It's just so cool.
It is. It
It's
is.
really great.
So
So,
thank you so much.
you're very welcome. Thank you, Naomi. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I appreciate you being here. And if you haven't, please like, subscribe, and be notified to help my channel grow. So we'll talk to you later.